We have about 3 hours till the Vulcan flight readiness firing, so let's just jump in over here and see what's going on. I will say this, one thing that KSP2 has over KSP1 is the load times. Oh yeah, Ebsta. There's tons of abandoned airstrips out there. You know why? It's because we had to wrestle, the US wrestled those from the Japanese one by one. And every time you gained a foothold, you built an airstrip to fortify and reinforce and resupply your planes so they could fly further and take more islands. The US literally fought from Hawaii. Well, midway if you want to be technical. If you want to kind of think about it this way, the farthest the Japanese got was Pearl Harbor. So they did that from Hawaii in 1941 to Okinawa, technically Japanese homeland, in 1945. From here all the way over to here. And you got to remember, these islands were very hard fought. The reasons why they were hard fought is because the Japanese never surrendered. They would fight. Doesn't matter if there's 10 on 1, still fight. And don't get me wrong, it's 10 on 1, but I'm not going to sit there and say like that wouldn't wear on somebody over time. I went away for a month. Welcome to Daughter into the World, and you are now back to playing KSP1. Is the current state of KSP2 that bad? Please update me in chat. Homing, what I've been telling everybody is that KSP2 needs more time to cook in the oven. It's going to be good in the future, but right now, you don't want to eat it. You don't want to consume because it's raw. It needs more time in the oven. It's freaking raw, mate. Look what Starship did to an armored case. Yikes. I just read a new OIG report that the boosters in RS-25s and the spend total has grown by $6 billion because they've bought more engines and boosters, and people are mad at that. Vulcan, NASA could procure a Pop-Tart and somebody would get annoyed. You see that in chat? Alright, let me see this real quick. To facilitate its lunar ambitions, NASA is adapting heritage hardware from the Space Shuttle era, including solid rocket boosters and RS-25 rocket engines to power the Artemis campaign space launch system. That will launch the Orion crew capsule to the moon from fiscal years 2012. From fiscal years From fiscal year 2012 through 2025, NASA's overall Artemis investment is projected to reach $93 billion, of which the SLS program costs represent $23.8 billion spent through 2022. For SLS launches, NASA entered into 2 booster contracts with Northrop Grumman and 2 RS-25 engine contracts with Aerojet Rocketdyne. 4 contracts, performance period, and values are boosters, April 2006 to December 2023, $4.4 billion. Booster Production and Operations Contract, BPOC, June 2020 to December 2031, $3.2 billion. Adaptation, RS-25 engines, June 2006 to September of 2020, $2.1 billion. And the RS-25 restart in production, November 2015 to September 2029, $3.6 billion. Given the enormous cost of the Artemis campaign, NASA is exploring ways to make the SLS, which requires 2 boosters and 4 RS-25 engines per launch, more affordable by moving towards a fixed-price cost structure for booster production and establishing cost reduction targets on the production of new RS-25 engines. While these efforts may result in savings over the long term, I'm done with this. Hold on. Give me a second, guys. You'll just be back next week, Hotel, but whatever. Ongoing schedule delays and cost increases raise questions about the agency's ability to meaningfully reduce booster and engine-related Artemis costs. In this audit, we examined the extent to which NASA is meeting cost, schedule, and performance goals for the boosters with adaptation contracts, whether the BPOC contract and RS-25 restart in production, whether BPOC and RS-25 restart in production, the follow-on production contracts reduce the government. That's a hell of a sentence, man. In this audit, we examine. In this audit, we examined the extent to which NASA is meeting cost, schedule, and performance goals for the boosters and adaptation contracts, and whether BPOC and RS-25 restart and production, the follow-on production contracts, reduce the government's financial risk and promote affordability. That's, I uploaded this PDF to a tool where you can ask questions about its contents. They missed an "and." Yeah, that's not a sentence, guys. Yeah, okay. Anyway, to complete this work, we conducted interviews with NASA, Northrop Grumman, and Aerojet Rocketdyne officials. We also examined contract files, contractors' financial reports and schedules, acquisition data, NASA's integrated Artemis master schedule, budget and risk management documentation, and award fee evaluation plans, performance reports, and other data. Not you, they. I know, Aqualux. That literally... What we found. NASA continues to experience significant scope growth, cost increases, and schedule delays on its boosters and RS-25 engine contracts, resulting in approximately $6 billion in cost increases and over 6 years in schedule delays above NASA's original projections. These increases are caused by long-standing, interrelated issues, such as assumptions that the use of heritage technologies from the Space Shuttle and Constellation programs were expected to result in significant cost and schedule savings compared to developing new systems for SLS. However, the complexity of developing, updating, and integrating new systems, along with the heritage components However, the complexity of developing, updating, and integrating new systems along with heritage components proved to be much greater than anticipated, resulting in the completion of only 5 of 16 engines under the adaptation contract and added scope and cost increases to the booster contract. While NASA requirements and best practices emphasize that technology development and design work should be completed before the start of production activities, the agency is concurrently developing and producing both its engines and boosters, increasing the risk of additional cost and schedule increases. All right, Guy, see you later. Additionally, Marshall Space Flight Center procurement officials who oversee all 4 contracts are challenged by inadequate staff, lack of experience, and limited opportunities to review contract documentation. Specifically, inadequate procurement management led us to question $24.5 million in payments to Northrop Grumman to resolve a disputed request for equitable adjustment REA of fee payments. Marshall procurement officials also encountered significant issues with the award of the BPOC. What's BPOC again? Booster Productions and Operations Contract. The follow-on booster contract, which started as an undefinitized letter contract in which term specification and price were not agreed upon before performance began. We found that NASA took 499 days to definitize the letter contract, which is far outside the 180-day federal guidance. At definitization, BPOC also lacked scope details, omitted key contract clauses, underwent a limited legal review, and is at risk of making duplicate payments for overlapping work performed under BPOC and the upcoming exploration, production, and operations contract. We also questioned an additional $5.6 million payment NASA made to Northrop Grumman related to the agency's improper liquidation of funds. Further, NASA used cost-plus contracts at times where we believe fixed-price contracts should have been considered to potentially reduce cost. That wasn't the sentence that time. Including the addition of 18 new production engines under the RS-25 restart and production contract and acquisition of Artemis IV booster long lead materials under the BPOC letter contract. In addition, contractors did not receive accurate performance ratings in accordance with federal requirements, such as the very good rating awarded to Aerojet Rocketdyne on the end item adaptation contract, despite only finishing 5 of 16 engines. As a result, we questioned the $19.8 million in award fees it received for 11 unfinished engines, which were subsequently moved to the RS-25 restart and production contract and may now be eligible to receive additional award fees. Faced with continuing cost and schedule increases, NASA is undertaking efforts to make SLS more affordable. Under the RS-25 restart and production contract, NASA and Aerojet Rocketdyne are projecting manufacturing cost savings of 30% per engine, starting with production of the 7th of 24 new engines. However, these savings do not capture overhead and other costs, which we currently estimate at $2.3 billion. Moreover, NASA currently cannot track pre-engine costs to assess whether they are meeting these projected saving targets. Yeah, first and foremost, I disagree with the OIG completely. The whole idea with SLS is that it was going to be developed over time. It was going to fly and also get iterated upon. SLS Block 1, Block 1B, Block 2, etc., etc. The thing here is that you don't do fixed price costs for development. That is stupid, actually. You know how I know? SLS is a pretty damn good example of why you don't do that. Because back when the SLS program kind of came about, 2013, 2014, they funded it on a fixed price, basically fixed price. They said it was cost plus, but it's basically fixed price. NASA's budget for SLS did not change. It just basically went up with inflation from 2014 basically to now. basically to now. Um, yeah, fixed pricing, fixed price contract implementation during development is literally the reason why SLS is the way that it is. It's funny to me that the OIG would recommend using a fixed price procurement mechanism for engines that have yet to be still developed. That is really stupid. That's a really good way to waste even more money. Yeah. The reason why these cost overruns are happening in the first place, guys, is because SLS was funded on... Once again, they called it a cost plus contract. And I'm not going to sit here and say that SLS's contracts couldn't be more straightforward. They kind of left it open on purpose. However, they ended up funding it basically on a fixed price over time. If you look at SLS's budget and NASA's budget basically over the last 10 years, SLS never got a bump in funding that was more than maybe... It never got like a drastic bump in funding. And this is why fixed price contracts for a rocket that is being developed is an extremely stupid idea. Because what SLS needs, what SLS would have needed, which would have saved us bajillions of dollars now, is if they basically threw a blank check at them right at the beginning to develop the booster. And that's basically what they did. SLS's preliminary engineering and design reports actually came in months ahead of schedule because of fixed price funding. Why is that? Well, SLS, say they gave NASA $10 billion for SLS's development. Drawing out the plans and finalizing all the blueprints doesn't cost $10 billion. Fixed pricing. Fast forward a couple years later, so 2015, 2016, they started trying to build and test SLS, doing all the analytical math and trying to get the critical design reviews for all subcomponents done correctly. This costs a lot of money. And then even if you move past the critical design review, right, you get into manufacturing. That costs even more money. Guess what? Still fixed prices. Oops. The report also notes that NASA's formal response failed to specify the facts with which it disagrees. The OIG suggests that NASA should have carefully considered management's technical comments to their draft report and incorporated that information in the final report, which, when sufficiently supported. Well, NASA could have said what I just said. What I just said makes sense. Literally, the reason why SLS has crazy cost overruns is because when they went to try and actually go and do all this stuff, and when they went to ask for all the money to do all this stuff, they said, no, it should be fixed price, not cost plus. Whoops. The funny thing is that we're in this area now, right? And now, don't get me wrong. The funny thing to me is that they called it cost plus at the time. But once again, the money is what talks. If you go and look at SLS's funding over the last 10 years, guess what? It's pretty fixed. It just goes up with inflation. The reality of that situation is that it shouldn't be a linear line like that. Why? Because making blueprints for SLS is not expensive, and then developing it and then manufacturing it and then upgrading its engines, that's the expensive part. So SLS's funding should have gone up, and then it should go down. And then once you get to stable flight operations, that's when you incorporate fixed price, because you know how much it's going to cost, because you can factor the development costs into your budget. None of this happened. None of this happened. They basically had a chunk of change to figure out what they wanted to do. And that was more than enough cash. And then eventually they would need more cash to develop the thing, and they got what they needed. And then the next year after that, they needed this much money and still got that. Right? And then the year after that, they needed this much money, still got that. This much money, still got that. And then now that we're moving into operational missions, the overruns aren't as bad as what they were 5 years ago, but these overruns are happening because SLS was funded with linear fixed funding, even though the contracts themselves say cost plus. Whoops. EJ, you forgot that this is the U.S. government. It's the U.S. government you're talking about. They can make a candy bar cost $500. Creeper. That's fair. Sorry, that guy pissed me off. I'm a little salty right now, so get ready for the spiciness, okay? Get ready for the spiciness. It's coming, bros. So, Creeper, yeah, candy bars costing $500 at face value is literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard, right? But what people don't understand when they look at stuff like this, and once again, I'm not saying it's right, but what you got to understand is why that candy bar costs $500. Why? Do you think someone just cooked the books and said, oh, candy bar costs 2 cents? No, it doesn't cost 2 cents. It costs $500. That's embezzlement. That's very, very illegal. Yeah, you can't just name your price on things, especially because you got to disclose your contracts to people because it's the government, especially in the case of NASA. You know, I see people that served in the military, and I'm not saying they're wrong. They say, oh, a pen costs 12 grand. Well, if you're using that pen to write something down on the other side of the world in some foreign adversarial country, the reason why the pen costs $12,000 is because that $12,000 is factoring in what was needed to get that $2 pen halfway around the world and in a combat zone. All of a sudden, that price kind of makes more sense. Remember, government pricing is total cost involved. It is entirety. It's not just buying the candy bar. It's buying the candy bar, shipping it wherever it needs to go. The cost of storing the candy bar until you need to put it somewhere. We see this type of cost structure analysis with SLS all the time. SLS's prices are total cost involved. That's why SLS seemingly carries such a crazy price tag. Because the SLS's budget, incorporated into the SLS's budget, is literally keeping the lights on at the VAB. Mowing the lawns outside on the crawlerway. Trimming the hedges at the launch pad. Not that there are any hedges, but you get the idea. Making sure that the crawlerway is sufficiently packed down so the crawler transporter can move on it. Maintaining the crawler transporter. That's part of the SLS program, is it not? What about Michoud? A multi-billion-dollar assembly facility for building moon rockets. You got to keep the lights on there, and you got to make all the manufacturing and tooling for it. That is all incorporated into the per unit cost of SLS because that's total cost involved. That is what it costs. There's a reason why the candy bar costs $500. Okay? Because you're seeing the total cost involved price. Right? Does that make sense? Security check on delivery personnel. Yep. They're saying that NASA cannot ever operate in an iterative development pipeline, starting with minimum viable and iterate to perfection. The OIG is going to regulate NASA to death. Correct. Yeah, homing, it's hilarious to me that they call development cost incurred because they decided to build some parts of the rocket first and other parts of the rocket later, and then proceeded to not fund it correctly. They call them. It's hilarious to me that they call them cost overruns. That's really funny. And they even say, well, NASA, they're above even NASA projections. Well, NASA projections are there because NASA projections are what it should cost if you funded it correctly in the first place. Whoops. Does that make sense, dudes? And don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily saying that the Officer Investigator General of NASA is incorrect, or the OIG is incorrect either. I don't think barking up their tree is the right idea at all. They're just there to look at the finances. They're just there to see why these cost overruns happen. But it's funny to me that they would recommend switching to fixed price contracting during development and say that is the reason. Say that is the reason why. That is the way that they're going to save money. Fixed pricing during development is a way to save money. So You want a fixed price for something that you haven't made, that you're going to develop and upgrade over time and end up costing something. Basically, literally no way to predict what that thing is going to cost in the future, because you don't know how much development is going to cost until you go and do it. I could sit here and say that launching a rocket on a roller coaster track that points straight up is going to cost this amount of money, and there's projections, right? And you can kind of figure that into your analysis. But I think that's very naive to say that you know exactly how much that's going to cost. The reality of the situation is that you won't get a good baseline until you actually go and do it. They're saying we need a baseline for engines that haven't been made yet. Okay. So I would contend to say that doing that is going to spiral the program out of control in cost overruns even more than it already is now. The reason why those cost overruns are happening right now is because because of fixed price funding for development. That's the reason. It's hilarious to me that they don't know that. I don't understand how you can't see this. But then again, maybe the scope of this is looking at a certain area and not looking at the macro picture like I am. Yeah, I was making a joke about how the price of something goes sky high when the government is involved, i.e. when the government is involved, drawing up the blueprints could cost millions of dollars. Candy bar example is probably a really good one. NASA can't just say that candy bar is $5 and then pay off their debts over time with the profit. They have to include building the store. Bingo. I mean, Aqualex, think about it. On a carrier, like on an aircraft carrier, you have an entire carrier air wing floating around at sea in a saltwater environment for extremely long periods of time. And that aircraft carrier is carrying all the maintenance facilities to maintain that entire fleet. Can anybody really give me a projection of how much that's going to cost without prior baselines? That's kind of funny to me, ULA is standing down. Vulcan is rolling back. Oh. ULA standing down from the engine flight readiness test today. During the countdown, the team observed a delayed response from the booster engine ignition system that needs further review prior to proceeding with flight readiness. That sucks. And once again, guys, I'm not saying that we couldn't get better at spending either, But the whole idea when people bring up, like, oh, this is too expensive, the government's involved, it's too expensive. The whole idea behind that is the reason why people share that information. I see spaceflight journalists make this mistake all the time. The reason why they share this is to try and elicit a response in you to say that that's not the right way to do it. When in reality, commercial contractors that have commercial partners that have seemingly lower prices are basically telling you the unit cost. They're not saying total cost involved. Long story short, you want to reduce it to its base element. There is no way in hell that Starship is going to end up costing less money overall than SLS. Not a chance. It is an infinitely more complicated system than SLS, and it's going to take a lot more money to get that to work right. Now, that Elon has that, so not that big of a deal. The OIG is pissing you off, like, dude, this isn't a Wendy's. I don't know, man. Let me just read this real quick. Will we ever know the total cost of Starship? Probably not. Elon said in an interview very recently, Fazilla, that Starbase, the whole Starbase operation is costing SpaceX probably about $1 billion every year. And now, don't get me wrong, it's probably not they started working on Starship in 2018, and you'd be crazy to think that a bunch of dudes welding stainless steel out in a field somewhere is costing you $1 billion a year. What most likely is going on is that funding for the whole Starbase project from SpaceX has gone up over time, like it's supposed to. They started simple, and And as you develop and iterate, you get more and more. It's going to end up costing more and more. I'd say it's probably been costing about $1 billion a year for maybe since like 2021, 2022. If I had to guess, don't get me wrong, I have no financial data behind this except for what Elon said. It's being funded to the tune of about $1 billion a year. SpaceX has basically been all hands on deck on this project basically since SN11 popped. And that was a little while ago. I mean, it's 2020, 21, 22, something like that. I don't remember when it was. They've been all hands on deck for scaling to an orbital flight. Actually, since SN15 landed, not SN11, excuse me. The first Starship landing, this thing. They've been all hands on deck and pouring crazy amounts of money, expanding facilities at Starbase, etc., etc. Long story short, the funny thing is that at the end of the day, I don't think if you stack SLS development costs up against Starship, I'll bet you Starship costs about the same. Now, here's the thing. It costs about the same, but Starship is an infinitely more capable vehicle. And if those development costs incurred rapid flight and reuse, then Starship basically on a unit cost will eat SLS's lunch. And that's the fact that people end up citing when they say why they don't like SLS. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, okay. How can you say it's too expensive? What's your baseline for that? SLS? It's funny to me. That's your comparison? Your comparison is SLS's costs are total cost involved. You're comparing TCI to unit price, which is that's terrible economic look. That's a terrible economic look. SN15 was May of 2021. Yeah, there you go. See, guys, here's something interesting, okay? Something interesting. I understand why cost projections exist. I understand why we would have budget projections for things. That's just being pretty fiscally responsible. But the funny thing is that in this day and age, when our budget projections for said project end up going over, everyone looks at that like, oh. Now, don't get me wrong. If it spirals out of control, then you got a big problem. That means your analysis of the situation was completely off. However, I think there's something to be said about building something for purpose and basically giving yourself a blank check to do it if you can, right? So, Apollo, believe it or not, the Apollo program did not have budget projections. Yeah, I said it. Didn't have it. All of the computational economic, or not computational, all the economic analysis on the Apollo program was done post-Apollo. Believe it or not, you can go look this up if you want. They didn't have budget projections for the Apollo program. Why? The reason why they didn't is because the Apollo program had a goal. The goal was to carry out President Kennedy's wishes, to avenge our dead president. That was the goal. So, basically gave them a blank check. They said, make what you need to make, and we'll fund it. As long as it's funding the need, we're fine. And that's what happened. That's why all those facilities during the Apollo program got built. Marshall, Stennis, Michoud, Kennedy. All those big, heavy facilities. Huntington Beach, where they built the where they built the third stages, the S4B test stand. All of those facilities got built out, and they said, we'll build them out, and this is going to cost, this is how much it costs. All right, cool. That's fine. The numbers for the Apollo program and the total cost involved and the price per unit were done in hindsight, basically after we went to the moon. Which is and that's an interesting and poignant thing to understand, okay? The reason why it's interesting to understand is because we built it for purpose first and then figured out the cost later. And it worked. Now, that feeds back into what I was talking about. What I was talking about is that you're not going to know how much it costs until how much it costs. How the hell did the budget people know how much it was going to take to get to the moon? How did you know? There's no way you could have come up for a budget projection for something that doesn't exist. Not a chance. Nothing like the Saturn V had ever been made, ever. The closest thing was the Saturn I or Titan or some other ICBM-derived vehicle. There's no way you could even develop a baseline cost because those vehicles are so much more remarkably simple compared to the Saturn V. Saturn V has a digital flight computer, onboard digital flight computer. That's not something that was done before that. Yeah. Before the Apollo program, computers were the size of a small apartment. After the Apollo program, they were about the size of a VCR. Yeah, the reason why you have a smartphone is attributed to the miniaturization of electronics, which the Apollo program basically kickstarted. So, with these big projects, you kind of have to go in. I mean, you could get a good ballpark where you want, but don't be like, oh, we got to change something when there's cost overruns. It's going to happen because the truth of the matter is, and no one says this, is that you have no freaking clue how much it's going to cost. You won't know how much it's going to cost until you go do it. Simple as that. And I think that's important to understand with grandiose aerospace engineering projects like Starship, like SLS, like the N1, like Buran, like the Space Shuttle. Does everyone here know how big a VCR was? I don't know, Jim, but you do, so you understood it, right? Gemini had an onboard digital computer, bare bones, but it was there. Gemini's onboard computer was a pocket calculator. Apollo's onboard computer is a smartphone, for comparison. But yes, technicality, yeah, of course, right? The CIA probably had financial data on N1 costs. Could have helped, I guess. Well, Beefy, the point that I'm trying to make, and let me just sum it up. I'm just kind of tossing out a bunch of word salad right now. The point that I'm trying to make is that making a big deal over SLS development costs and cost overruns right now is stupid. That's really stupid. One, you're always going to have cost overruns. Two, you have no idea how much it's going to cost. Stop trying to kid yourself. Three, what the hell are you comparing this to? How can you derive what is expensive and what's not? Are you comparing it to the Apollo program? Because theoretically, the SLS program is way less expensive than the Apollo program because the launch pad for it pretty much already existed. Right? And that's the part of the this is the part of turning the page a little bit. This is the part of the OIG report that I actually don't mind. The OIG report is wondering why certain financial transactions are made. Now, I don't mind if development that's the other part of the report, That the first part was basically citing what their shocked Pikachu face when stuff costs more money because they didn't fund the development correctly. They said this is how much it should cost, and NASA goes, "You think a motor's going to cost $500 million a pop? Well, guess what? It's going to cost like $1 billion a pop." And then the actual price ends up being like $1.2 billion a pop. Now, these are just made up numbers. And then the OIG says, it's even above your projections. Like, dude, you said it was going to cost half of that. Shut up. Now, weird payments. Now, that's not to say that the OIG is completely useless. This is the part I actually agree with them about. Now, it seems like NASA, because they're developing the engines and the RS-25s are an ongoing iterative process, it seems like they shifted funds from like the BPOC contract to the RS-25 manufacturing contract. And that's the reason why Aerojet Rocketdyne made 5 out of the 16 engines that were requested in the contract. Now, the weird thing is that Aerojet Rocketdyne got paid to make 16 engines up front. NASA gave the money up front. They made 5 of them when NASA said, "Oh, okay, we need to, we can develop, we can make a better engine." And Aerojet Rocketdyne said, "Oh, okay, cool. Let's renegotiate the contract." And then, so they renegotiate the contract. They give them money. They award a new contract because based off of the development of the engines and the upgrades and the iterations of it. And then Aerojet Rocketdyne builds the latter part of the 5 out of 16 engines under a new contract. Now NASA gave them an award fee. NASA gave them an award fee for awarding them a new contract that was literally based off of the old one, based off of the developments that they implemented. That right there, I think, is why the OIG exists. That's a little weird. They gave them the money up front to make 16 engines, and when they made 5 and decided to change the contract, they're going to give them more money for a new contract? And then on top of that, more money in the future for building the engines that they were already paid to build? That right there is a little bit sus. I agree with the OIG in that regard. I disagree that they say they recommend... I disagree with the first part where they say they recommend a fixed price system for development contracts, which is... Yeah, that's stupid. That will spiral the program out into literal bureaucratic hell, because they're gonna, if they went and did that and said, well, an engine costs $100 billion or $100 million to make one engine, okay, total cost involved, right? And then they go to make the engines because they haven't done it yet, the engines end up costing $120 million. And then the OIG looks at that and says, cost overruns. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, you don't know how much it's going to cost. That's how you get another ML2 situation. Yep. Vulcan, I would be... But once again, ML2 happened because they kept changing the frigging contract. They kept awarding a contract, paying them to do said work, and then under a fixed price system. And then when the money ran out, because it's fixed price, they changed the contract up and started awarding them more money under another fixed price contract. Once again, this whole mess, all these cost overruns are basically, they're basically fixing the problems that they had because SLS was not funded. SLS was funded fixed price. You're fixing all the problems that you're going to get down the road from trying to do a task that cost $100 billion for $50 billion. Eventually, you're going to have to pay that other 50 because at the end of the day, you have to build a rocket that gets to the moon. So now it's an engineering problem. The laws of physics don't change just because you're up there. And I find it really funny, Vulcan, because you're right, it is another ML2 situation. I find it really funny that there are lawmakers out there that think they can legislate against the laws of physics. That's really funny to me, because that's what we see happening here. That's what you see happening here. It's very strange to me, right? It's like the government goes to NASA and says, "Hey, how much is building a moon rocket going to cost? We want you to build a moon rocket." Okay. Probably I don't know, $150 billion total over or let's just say $30 billion over 10 years. Congress goes, all right, $30 billion over 10 years. How about we give you $1 billion for 30 years? That's the same amount of money, right? And NASA says, yeah. Sure. All right. Because spoiler alert, guys. That's what happened. That's what happened. See what I mean? It's funny how they're looking at all the symptoms of past. They're looking at all the symptoms of past bad contracting, and saying that restructuring the contracts now, further bad contracting is going to fix the problem. That I find that funny to me. Yeah, that's funny. If only NASA could get private funding. I'm banging my head. Erudite. That goes. It's not that NASA needs private funding. NASA has a good amount of money to play with. By far and away the most funded space program of any country. NASA's budget is more than every other space program from every other country's combined. The problem here really kind of stems that there's blatantly a breakdown between what NASA thinks it's going to cost and what Congress thinks it's going to cost. There's clearly a breakdown there. And that's been happening basically since somebody... Now, the process used to be good. Here's the thing. The process used to work correctly. They used to spend money... Well, let's just say it's better than it is now. It was... One could really make the argument that it's been this way since 1972, but... Let's just back off from that one a little bit. Basically, how NASA worked and kind of the norm. No, that's not really the right thing. That's not really the right way to say it. I was going to say basically how NASA worked when the shuttle was flying is that they would come up with an engineering project or a science project, and they would ask for the funds, and you'd get it. Because you already have a working launch vehicle, so how much a space shuttle launch cost was very well understood. It was very well understood because we've launched a lot of space shuttles, because you ain't going to know how much it's going to cost until you launch a lot of the damn thing, so you can get a good data set. So we kind of knew how much it was going to cost. So a lot of the engineering decisions, a lot of the funding was based off of engineering decisions. Basically, NASA said, "Hey, we're going to need $10 billion to launch Hubble or something." They'd be like, "All right, cool, let's do that. Let's greenlight that project." And then it would happen. And it was, Columbia happened, and then they started introducing the Constellation program. Constellation program did that, and it was working pretty much on an iterative kind of schedule, right? And they basically, when the Constellation program came around, they basically funded the Constellation program like it was an on-need thing. They started funding it like the Apollo program, saying basically, all right, let's do it. We want to, if we're going to retool, if we're going to wean ourselves off the space shuttle and go back to beyond low Earth orbit exploration, basically continuing right where we left off, they started throwing crazy amounts of money at NASA, basically say, develop it and we'll figure out the cost of it later, which is how you should develop things. But they started doing that literally right during the Great Recession. And lo and behold, some politician used that as an excuse to say that we're spending too much money. I am good at budgeting, except when it comes to things that I want, in which case I'm bad, which is literally every politician. And that they ended up canceling the Constellation program and then getting rid of the space shuttle, retiring the space shuttle literally in the same year, and then we have nothing. But see, here's the thing. When that happened, they tried to pull the rug out from NASA completely, saying that commercial can do it better, which I'm not going to say that they couldn't. SpaceX is pretty damn good at doing low Earth orbit stuff right now. I'd say that's a fair comment to make. However, when they tried to pull the entire rug out from NASA and say NASA should just use commercial providers to get into space from now on, Congress freaked out. Congress freaked out because Congress, believing they were representing the will of people or some defense contractors, whatever, said, the hell, you're going to pull out the rug from NASA? No, you're not. And they basically signed a mission architecture with a fixed price system into law that made sure that they were going to develop another rocket instead of using just commercial partners. And that has been a hot button contention, for space flight fans to argue over basically for the last decade. That's been a hot button issue since. Commercial can do it better. Or this can do it better. The reality of the situation is that NASA's not going to do it right when they don't have the proper funding. If the project is funded correctly, basically giving a blank check for development because you build for a need, not because you have to, because it's law. You build for a need for what your space program needs, right? It'll always end up being cheaper. Always. You know how I know? That's what commercial does. And I'm not, people say, oh, well, that's why we go with commercial, EJ, because the government can't do that. The Apollo program is a pretty damn good example of how that's not right at all. There's 6 flags up on the moon right now. There were American flags, they're probably white now. Sun. The sun does sun things. The French flags now. But that's a pretty damn good example of why you don't want to be like, how much do you think this is going to cost? That's going to cost $500 million. All right, cool. I'll give you 250. No. And then later down the road, why isn't this thing working how I want? I gave you the money that you needed. No, you didn't. You gave me the money that you think I needed. That was not the money that I requested. And then at the end of the day, it ends up costing $600 million. And then political people go, but you said it was going to cost $500 million. You said it was going to cost $500 million. Why doesn't it cost $500 million? But it costs more because you didn't give me enough money, and I have to play catch up to launch rocket by your law. See what I mean? SLS was literally designed by committee. It was signed into law because the Congress wanted it. Now, here's the thing. People have been using that as a reason to bash Congress, blah, 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 blah. I mean, pretty much people use any reason to bash politicians, myself included, nowadays, right? But the thing is, guys, when you think about it, the thing is that I don't look at that as, I don't look at that as NASA, like Congress basically telling NASA what to do because that's what Congress wants. I think Congress saved NASA, if you really want my honest opinion. I think they saved NASA. Seriously, they saved NASA's manned spaceflight division. NASA would not have that. We wouldn't have the Artemis program if it wasn't for Congress. We would have nothing. We would have Falcon 9s going to the ISS. And maybe the possibility of Starship. Something to think about, I suppose. Was the shuttle-derived part also in the law? Well, here's the thing, Phil. If you want to talk about why building something based off of... There's nothing wrong with building a new launch vehicle using some off-the-shelf components from previous programs. The Saturn I is a good case. The Saturn I used the tooling from Jupiter and Juno fuel tanks all clustered together to make a first stage, and it used engines from a Thor missile. There's 8 of them, though, instead of just 1 in a Thor missile. There's nothing wrong with using leftover parts from previous space programs. The reason why you do that, is not just to get the parts, it's not about physically obtaining the rocket engines, even though that has a lot to do with it. And already manufactured hardware is super useful, right? Super useful to have for development, for testing, for even, putting one launch vehicle together for a test flight or whatever. That's not a bad, like Artemis 1, right? But where that goes, Where that goes horribly wrong is the biggest reason why they do that is to retain technical expertise. Okay? So with the Saturn I, the Army Ballistic Missile Agency was folded over basically into NASA. And all the scientists that were working on Redstone, Jupiter, and Juno rockets ended up working on the Saturn I. They ended up working for NASA. So you retained the technical expertise. So when you went and built the Saturn I first stage out of leftover Jupiter, Juno, and Redstone parts, you had all the technical expertise, all the people that know how to manufacture that stuff, all the people that know how to put the engines together. You retain your technical knowledge base. Okay? That worked. That works really well in that regard. Now, that's what we were doing with Constellation. And then they canceled Constellation and retired the shuttle and fired probably a good 50% of the technical base that worked on the shuttle program. Fired all of them. Literally the day after STS-135 landed, about 5,000 employees at the Kennedy Space Center found pink slips on their desk. You fired all the people that know how to work on these things. You fired them. So now you bring in a bunch of new engineers trying to work on an engine that you have a lot of heritage flight hardware for, but they have no idea how to do it. Even in this OIG report, they say lack of expertise. They talk about it. Lack of experience. See, it's not just about using the hardware you already have. It's about using the people that make the hardware. That's the more important part, always. Speaking, can you believe it was 1 year ago that Starliner returned from its first flight? Stuff goes fast. Ooh, a Twitter Spaces with Jim Farley and Elon Musk. Ooh, I kind of want to listen to that. Yeah, sorry guys, I know I'm under Kerbal now, but yeah. I can use a drill, but I can't build one. And it's funny because that OIG report also talks about how they want to build new engines, and then they get surprised when they say, what do you mean it doesn't cost the same as the shuttle program engines? What do you mean? What do you mean it's not the same amount? Hello? You fired all the engineers. Jim Farley is the CEO of Ford, Erudite. Yeah. Yeah, Jim Farley's cool. He's a cool dude. He races cars for fun. He races vintage Mustangs and Fords and stuff. Yeah. He also runs Ford. Pretty cool dude. And the guy actually builds models of old F1 cars in his spare time, and he posts about it on Twitter and stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so, once again, it's something to take into account. Someone tried to rug pull NASA and Congress didn't like that. Aqualex, you know what the funny thing is? Congress didn't like that, and guess what? Neither do I. So Congress said they were, this is not what the people want, and guess what? Yeah, in my particular case, yes, that is not what I want. Keep in mind, commercial did pan out. All right, commercial did pan out. The commercial spaceflight endeavors panned out pretty damn well. However, at the time, they were making a gamble on, particularly SpaceX. They were making a gamble on SpaceX in 2009, 2010. They were making a gamble on a company that had launched 5 rockets total, 4 Falcon 1s and 1 Falcon 9, and 3 of the Falcon 1s had failed. SpaceX had a below 50% track record at the time. Literally Astra tier right now. That's why I kind of get annoyed when people look at Astra and say, they have no idea what they're doing. Okay, sure. So they said, this commercial contractor can do it. You don't need $30 billion. They said they can do it for like $1 billion. Yeah, you're good. You don't need this. Go to the moon? No. You do it on commercial. So when Congress said, no, 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 that's not wise. That we could lose our edge in flying into space, right? You know, Congress said that. The executive branch said, yeah, I hear you, but also, no. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. It's going to cost us too much money. Commercial can do it better. And Congress said, fine. All right, fine. You want to be like that? Fine. Guess what? Now it's the law. Yeah, I know, Aqualex, right? Hi, I have a shuttle question that I can't answer. Even Google doesn't help. Why is the speed inverted? 0 knots is on top of the scale in the shuttle HUD. Give me an example, Dio. There's no way to do something at a profit margin for less than a non-profit agency. Yeah, Tank, and I think the lesson to learn here is that it's always going to cost expensive, and but it will cost less if you put the money up front and fund what you want to do correctly. Trying to say like, oh, we'll design an upper stage for this rocket later. You don't need an upper stage right now. We'll just use another upper stage. We'll give you the money for an upper stage later. Nope. That's not good. That's not how that works at all. Yeah, that's really stupid. Can you imagine if SpaceX developed Falcon 9 and put Falcon 1 stages on top of a Falcon 9 and said, yeah, that's an interim design? I'm pretty sure they would have gotten laughed out of the room. I was watching a shuttle cockpit landing and I saw that the speed scale is not like in a plane where 0 is at the bottom. Yeah, give me the video and maybe I might be able to give you some context. I need to see the video. Where are we? What are you building today? I'm not sure, Fish. I'm all kind of... Guys, I'll admit it. That guy that I banned from the stream a little while ago just kind of got in my head. So I'm like, it's... That guy makes my job a lot harder, and it really stresses me out. And the stress kind of got to me for a second, dudes. Sorry. So I'm kind of like all screwed up here. The OIG report helped kind of dial me back in. But yeah, like you get curveballs when you stream. That happens. I own it. What happened? There's this guy that comes into my stream probably about once a week. And don't get me wrong, the guy isn't a heckler or something. He's not a troll. Like me and the mods have been watching for a long time, years. The guy isn't a troll. We thought it was a bot. We thought it was just somebody trying to screw with me. But it's not. Because if it was just a regular troll, I'd just ban him and be done with it, right? That's usually what I do with most people. People come in, oh, the Earth is flat. You're a space streamer? I'm going to try to piss you off. The Earth is flat. Dude, I get that on the daily. Whatever. All right. Yeah, you're right, dude. This dude, what he does is he comes in, he talks in chat, talks with me for a little while, says, hi, how you doing? I say, oh, hi, how are you? Right? And maybe talks with me about space for about 1 or 2 seconds, like to the point where it's not a bot, and then stops for a second. And then about 15, 20 minutes later, the guy just starts talking to himself in chat. Just talking to himself. Hey, Bob Rico, 32 months. I can see it, Dio. Yeah, I'll look in a moment. The guy starts talking to himself. And eventually it gets to the point, like he'll say, oh, man, you're such an idiot. No, I'm not. You're an idiot. No, you're such an idiot, man. This, we all know that a 1991 Honda Civic is the best car of all time. No, it's not. An 86 Toyota is better. Like, these are just examples, right? It's usually not about cars. The guy likes to talk about music.
Discovery, go at throttle.
But where it gets to me, where this gets under my skin, is this guy he clogs up my chat with his conversations. that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. And if I have to give an explanation like this, right, it's just time away from looking at chat. And if chat is clogged up with that kind of stuff, it makes it harder for me to communicate with you guys. It's really difficult. Now, here's the thing. Hey, Wolf, 11-month resub, 1970 Elko. Nice car. Here's the thing. I know what people are going to say. You guys are going to say, just ban him. I do. Literally like once a week. And the guy just comes back, says, hi, EJ, how you doing? I look up to you. I respect you. I think you're really cool. Okay, if you respected me, you wouldn't have conversations with yourself in chat. Oh, yeah, no, I won't do that. Proceeds to go have a conversation with himself in chat. Literally happens every week. I'm a pretty patient dude. Guys, like, I'm patient. I understand, like, I explain rocket science to people, right? When you do that, when you choose to go down that path, you have to be pretty patient because you're explaining an extremely abstract concept to people that not a lot of people have a grasp of. Not because people can't understand rocket science. I firmly believe that anybody here is smart enough to be able to go to school and get an aerospace engineering degree. Yes, that means you. I called you out. Go and do it if you really want to. But that's just the thing. You have to want to. You have to want it. It's not whether you can or can't learn the material. It's about if you want to learn the material, okay? However, explaining rocket science to people does come with you have to be patient. You have to be patient. Not a lot of people are going to get what you're trying to explain right away. So you might have to try 3 or 4 different ways. And that requires a lot of communication with chat. And, I'll have a conversation with the viewer and I'll be like, hey, I'll ask like, well, if you're going to do this, wouldn't you do that? And I have conversations with you guys to explain stuff, try to kind of like analogous to like how a teacher would explain something, right? And it's really, really difficult to ask questions and interact with chat when I go to ask a viewer a question and it gets buried under some guy having a conversation with himself about how he likes Beyonce over Tina Turner or something, rip. Right? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And like I said, I know what you guys are going to say. Just ban the guy. Oh, yeah, I do every week. It's been almost every week for the past 5 freaking years, man. Gets old, okay? It gets old. It gets old. I block the guy or I ban the guy. The guy just comes back a week later with another account. And now don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. Like I said, I get all kinds I don't get any less hecklers than any other streamer, right? And I don't really pay them any mind. I don't really care. I get it. Somebody wants to come in. It's a Twitch stream. Somebody we're having serious conversations about space flights. They're going, the moon is flat, bro. Yeah, sure, man. I get it. Like, I know people are screwing with me. They're just messing around. It's just internet trolls. What bothers me the most about this guy it's not like, and this is like a personal attack. Like, it's clear that this person needs help. And there's nothing I can do. And as a streamer that like the whole purpose of the stream is to educate people, it really sucks when you can't help. It's really hard. It's like the one that got away from me, man. That's what makes this so difficult for me, Have you tried reaching out to Twitch about it? How would Twitch solve this problem, Creeper? If he's using a VPN, there's no way to get around that. Yeah, Mintalk, it's about once a week. Yeah, and it's been about once a week for about a half decade. Ask my mods. Oh yeah, they know. We can't help everyone. Some people are too far gone. Yeah, Dreadsville, I know. Like, normally if it was somebody that was just, like, here once and they were like, yeah, I don't get this stuff. Rocket science isn't for me. I'll see you later. That doesn't bother me either. The fact that this guy keeps coming back over and over and over and over again, and puts me in a position where I either have to ban him or ignore him. That hurts, man. It hurts. It's, the guy comes in here and says that, oh, I respect you. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't do that. Yeah, so, dude, not a lot of stuff here on the internet gets in my head. That's one, like, I can't do anything with this situation. All I can do is just wait until it happens again and ban the guy. Like, he doesn't even try to engage me in off-topic conversations, Den. The guy will ask me a few questions about space, and then about 15, 20 minutes later, he'll just start having conversations with himself. Almost like the guy is talking in another chat and doesn't understand that he's also, like it's almost like he's typing and talking to somebody in, like, an instant messenger or something, and everything that he's typing is getting broadcast in Twitch chat. I don't know what's going on with this. And now, like I said, at first I was like, it's a bot, whatever. Or it's a troll. Don't pay it any mind. Whatever. It literally happens once a week. Yeah, it can't help someone who doesn't want the help. Yeah, Blue, I know. I get that. I understand that. It gets a little bit aggravating when you're constantly reminded of this every week. You know what I mean? No, most of you, dude, and here's the thing. Like I said, I know who's a heckler, I know who's heckling, I know who's gonna troll. None of that stuff usually bothers me. This bothers me. Like 99.9% of the things people say in chat do not bother me. The vast majority of you guys are fine. You're okay. Comes with the job. The Timberborn Reservoir from last night. You like that, Amorbe? Yeah, sorry guys. It's just a rare case where I gotta get this off my chest, dude. Because now I'm like, you know, like I said, the vast majority of things that people say don't piss me off. Heck, if Twitch didn't have global rules, I'd say do whatever you want. I really don't care. Right? But, you know, we're in Twitch's house right now. You got to abide by their rules. I understand that, and I always will. But, man, you know, like, it's tough, dude. It's tough. This is the one thing that, like, just really pushes my button. It's really pushing my buttons, bro. Yeah, it's just a rare case where you see me kind of, I guess the closest thing that this would be approximated to is complaining. Yeah, Lore, 5 years. No joke, man. That's not an exaggeration either. And guys, I really don't bring this up. I don't bring it up. You don't want to hear about my baggage. I sit here and play video games all day. Give me a friggin' break. But, dude, I'm sorry. I had to get that off my chest. It's so freaking aggravating. As you said in the past, there's no sense about worrying about something you can't control. Yeah. I understand Blue, you're right, of course. And like I'm telling you, the vast majority of these things people say in chat, I don't care, whatever. I'll take the time, even if it takes an hour and it derails the stream for an hour, I'll take the time to explain things, like the OIG report just a second ago. The problem here is that it makes my job harder. It's tough because I don't know when it just starts out of nowhere, and I don't know where, like, I don't know when or where it's going to happen. Like, it happens once a week, right? But it's tough. It's really difficult. Like, you know, dude, all right, what I'm trying to tell you is that you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. After 5 years, it gets freaking old. That's it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're probably right. Screw it. I'll stop. I'll stop. It gets freaking old, bro. I have pretty damn good bandwidth for patience, but god damn, man. Ugh. Freaking ban on site. Well, that's the problem, Snib. I don't know who it is. They change their name all the time. They come back. They have regular conversations. I treat them like any other regular viewer, and then they go start doing that. I won't know who it is until after I engage. This is why this is frustrating. Could you see how that would piss you off? I don't know, Gore-Tex. I'd have to go look. What happened? Nah, Jens, it's just a very rare case where a viewer actually gets under my skin. That really doesn't happen. Like, ever. But this mother trucker, though. Yeah, and it's not a lot, Blue. It's just a constant minor annoyance for quite literally a half decade. I don't want to be that guy, but can you get back to my question? Yeah, sorry guys. I usually don't use this as a space to vent about my personal freaking problems because no one wants to hear it. But let's go. Shuttle stuff. Let me turn the page. All right, what do we got here? So Dio, you're wondering why the airspeed ticker goes up. Oh, my left ear loves this.
I don't see approach line yet. I think maybe we did get it.
The body flap went to trail, you got it.
Okay, thanks.
Nappies look good.
Okay, Scooter, 7,000 feet.
Just like pilot, right, Jack?
Yep. 6,000 feet, you're looking good.
So, on the heads-up display here for the shuttle, there's a little bit of information being shown. Right here, 15, 20, that is your angle of attack. So that is the attitude of the orbiter in this particular case relative to the ground. So the shuttle is pitched down at about 18 degrees. So it's nose down. Over here, this ticker is your altimeter. It's in feet. I know, Euro people. Yeah, I get it. I get it. All right. It's currently at about 5,600 feet right there. And then Dio, you're talking about over here. This is your airspeed indicator. Your airspeed indicator is in knots, right? Yeah, Aquilix. Yeah, for sure. So, Dio, you're talking about this thing over here. Why does it go... So, on an aircraft, the ticker... 0 on the ticker is down there, and as you go faster, your ticker will tick upwards. The ticker tape, it'll go up. Now, it looks like here, from what I can tell, that, yeah, you're right, it is, the numbers descend, and it goes up.
Active 2, I'm decluttering.
Hey, I see the pull-up cues.
Next call is...
Oh, they got rid of the HUD.
Roger at 3,000.
Okay.
I see the speed brake moving now.
Pull-up cues
Going
coming,
to
Scooter.
23, Scooter.
Approaching the pre-flare. Arm the gear.
I got a good light.
Okay, there's the flare.
Pull. Max speed 317, Scooter.
Copy. Looking for the ball.
Okay, 700. I got a ball bar.
Look at the shuttle approach the ground, dude. Literally a controlled crash.
Gear down.
On time.
I mean, it's not a carrier landing,
Driving
but
it
you get
down.
the idea.
Intercepting the ball bar.
Here's down.
150. Good, looking good.
We're looking for a touchdown at about 215.
5250. 3230. 2220.
Right there.
10210. I agree.
It was a little slow. There we go.
Shoot.
Nice.
185.
Derotating.
Not that I could do any better.
Good rate. 2. Wow.
Where is this camera located on the shuttle? This camera, from what I can tell, relative to the center line, is your pilot view. So it's on the right-hand side of the flight deck.
Let's shoot it.
Nose gear. Oh, that nose gear is a little rough.
Okay, Scooter, I see.
Back up, wait on nose.
Kurlani, did he come in a little hot? Shuttle really, I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. It kind of depends on what's in the payload bay. Touchdown speed on the shuttle ranged anywhere between 220 and like 195 knots. It really depends. It depends on where you're landing. Depends on what payload is in the payload bay. Because if you have a heavier payload coming down with you in the shuttle, you're going to have a higher touchdown speed because you have more momentum.
2220.
Right there.
10-210, I agree. You're down.
Shoot.
Nice.
185.
Derotated.
Good rate. 2, 2.
Bonk.
Wow. That shoot is.
We're not going to make the center turn on.
Okay, Scooter, I see.
Backing up, wait on nose gear.
Right.
Thank you. I see good
Okay,
weight on
thank-
nose gear, Megan.
Cool.
Build inside at 10,000 feet.
You saw it too. It's driving me crazy. I'm not 100% sure why the ticker on the HUD goes up, dude. Yeah, I'm not sure. That ticker tape is backwards to what a normal aircraft would be. Now, Dio, where my mind is going, dude, is that, well, there's a reason for it. Okay. There's a reason why it's like that. It is aerospace engineering. Nothing is done by accident. Nothing is done to look cool. Except maybe SpaceX's spacesuits, but they still work. That's the most important part, right? So, Dio, let's think about it. Why would the ticker tape be backwards? Why would it be backwards? What would be the reason for that? To confuse the Russians. Maybe. Imagine it was either a designed in the 70s thing or to split the visual motion components to make two data points distinct. Well, peripheral vision would be able to see two ticker tapes going at different rates, Aqualux, right? Like, I mean, maybe, yeah, it could be a UI thing. That's you're right. I mean, that's possible. Like, that's possible, but I'm looking for a more concrete reason, if that makes any sense, because it didn't matter. See, Tankin, that's the thing. Because it didn't matter is usually not something that you encounter with aerospace engineering. Everything is done with purpose for a very good reason, right? That is like 99.5% of like most aerospace applications. As my English is not very good, I have a hard time to find an answer on Google. Sorry to bother you. No, Dio, believe me, you are not doing that. You are not even close to the thing that's bothered me the most today. Don't worry about it, man. It's fine. It's good. Could be a basic difference between powered and unpowered aircraft. Well, why don't we, maybe we should go look at a glider's heads-up display. I guess because the shuttle has no form of propulsion like normal planes, so it's not like that number is going to go back up much. Yeah, but your speed does fluctuate, Blue. It does go up and down, right? Hey, Dreadsoul, gifted us up to Dio. Thank you very much. The speed does go up and down. It's probably something to do with the way they are measuring airspeed and the number of gears used to change the direction of motion. Rockets, maybe. Yes, but if your attention is elsewhere and your peripherals are both going down, it can cause some weird effects. It might even cause some disorientation, making it feel like you're pitching when you're not. Fair. The only HUD a glider has is yaw string. That's all is needed. Not to derail the convo. Are you derailing the convo about that's already derailed the stream? What's on your mind? Standing down for today, we test the BE4 ignition system during the count. Timing and response doesn't look right. Need to understand it. Yeah, Zay. If the igniter does, if a point of ignition doesn't happen at the exact right time, you could flood the rocket motor like you flood the engine in a car. And instead of just not starting like a car engine, the rocket engine will hard start. Hard starting a rocket engine is basically the equivalent of starting up an internal combustion engine in a car with your foot to the floor on the gas pedal and then turning the motor over. Usually, something's probably going to break. Yeah, something's probably going to break. Can't say what. I'm pretty sure it wasn't engineered to do that like a car engine. It wasn't engineered to start with the throttle at 100%. Just putting it out there. If you're still doing space, here's that architecture stuff. It's been a long day, Novus. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to play Kerbal, but maybe we'll just keep going with space things. I don't know. So, yeah, that's what I think is going on. If the ignition timing is off in a car, you're going to get a detonation. And detonation won't kill an engine initially. Give it some time. Detonation will immediately destroy a rocket engine. Yeah, that's probably what's going on. If speed is going up, shouldn't the gauge be scrolling upwards? Let's take a look at it again.
Nappies look good.
Okay, Scooter, 7,000 feet.
Just like pilot prediction.
6,000 feet, you're looking good. 5,000
I see
feet
radar.
good. 1's good. Back to 2. I'm decluttering.
Hey, I see the pull-up cues.
Next call is speed brakes, Megan.
Roger, at
Scooter.
10,000, body flaps going.
I don't see approach line yet.
I think what Oculus is saying they would be different, so you know the one scrolling up is acceleration and one going down is your altitude. Yeah, I know. I know, Creeper. What I was saying is, if that's the case, why do the vast majority of airplanes do the opposite of that? Yeah. Do whatever you're feeling. Thanks, man.
I think maybe we did get it.
The body flap went to trail, you got it.
Okay, thanks.
Nappies look good.
Okay,
So-
Scooter, 7,000 feet.
Dio, there is another... I have another theory. So the shuttle's heads-up display and onboard flight computers were made by a company called Rockwell International. Rockwell International is, at that point when the shuttle was made, is basically North American. So the same company that made like the P-51D Mustang. They also made the command service module for the Apollo program, but at that point in time, North American merged with Rockwell, and they changed the name of the company from North American Rockwell to Rockwell International. Maybe it's going backwards because you gain speed when you point down. It's possible, Hotag, yeah. Another possibility that it could be is that, well, Rockwell had other defense contracts. That there were other programs, you know. And once again, I'm not saying that this is exactly what's going on. But Rockwell got the contract to design the orbiter for the space shuttle. They got awarded that contract in 1972. They said design the orbiter. Boeing engineered the external tank, and Morton Thiokol engineered the solid rocket boosters. You know, three different contractors for all the major components of the orbiters. Aerojet Rocketdyne made the engines, etc., etc. But Rockwell made the orbiter and the computers on the orbiter. Now, Rockwell had other defense contracts at the time. Rockwell also made the B-1 Lancer, and I know that the B-1 and the space shuttle share avionics systems. Yeah, that thing has a shuttle flight computer in it. Or a better way to say it would be that the space shuttle has a modified B-1 computer in it. That's what the shuttle's flight computer is. The B-1 is probably one of the most beautiful planes ever designed. It is very, very aesthetic. Precisely, Manic. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mil-spec HUD. Yes. The shuttle and the B-1 were basically developed at around the same time by the same company, and I know that they share avionics systems. So, it's a possibility that might be something left over from the B-1 avionics. Now, why a bomber would have the ticker going in the other direction, I have no idea. The other thing to take into account is that even to this day, there's really no standardization of user interfaces on aircraft. Now, I know people are going to be like, what are you talking about? Yeah, of course there is. There's altimeters. Altimeters, you know, compass. Yeah, of course there. Yeah, are they in the same place on every plane? That's what I mean. And then when we get into digital flight displays, right, like what the shuttle had, you know, there's no UI for airplanes. Is the Boeing UI on the primary flight display the exact same as the Airbus? No, it's a little bit different. There might be little subtle differences between the user experience in certain planes with digital flight displays because they were made by that company, and that company thinks that that's the way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that's probably why it's like that, because Rockwell thought that that was the best UI for the application of the shuttle, or it's some B1 derived system. It's probably one or the other. I don't know if we can come up with a good concrete reason without more information, but that's my guess. You feel like there should be some standardization in that regard. Well, the gauges are standardized, but how they're set up, their position, the UI is set up differently for every aircraft. Every aircraft has a compass. Not every aircraft has a compass in the same spot. Every car has a speedometer, Aqualex. But does the speedometer in a Tesla look like the one in my 97 Ford? Probably not. Right? There does seem to be a mostly agreed idea of what colors to use. There is a standardization to an extent, but there's not a total standardization of UI, Kelly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for your time. I now have a new area of research on the subject. No problem. Probably a stupid question. But when in space do we need less oxygen because less resistance to move against it? What? Okay. Hold on. What did you say? So, probably a stupid question, but when in space do we need less oxygen because less resistance to move against and lungs can expand more, taking in more? What makes you think that, zombie? This is why pilots get a type certificate. Makes sense, Meatwad. That's what I mean about anything with aerospace. I can say this pretty damn conclusively, dude, that everything that has to do with an airplane exists for a very, very, very good reason. Nothing was an afterthought. If it was, we'd see as many airplanes flying around as we do cars. Okay. Why? Well, why do I say that? A lot of cars are made to look nice, not necessarily function. A Ferrari is a good example. Ferrari is like one of my favorite car manufacturers. I'm just coping with the fact that their Formula One team sucks. Okay. Aviation rules are written in blood. Bingo. Kelly, the reason why all that standardization, the reason why all those rules are there, and the reason why everything does something and form follows function with planes is because most of the time all those things were implemented because the other way that it was implemented got somebody killed. Yeah, there you go. Yep. I don't see why the shuttle would be any different. Thank you for being here today. I need the distraction. Having one of my worst days. You know what, Geek? I'm not having a good day either, dude. I'm not really having a good day either. But hey, try to make the best of it. Well, we've seen some afterthoughts in aviation from Boeing recently, and we've seen how that turns out. Yes. I mean, Agalex, I would contend to say that that's what happens when you, that's what happens when you base your systems engineering architecture on what someone thinks versus how stuff actually works in the real world, But that's just me. What was the heaviest shuttle landing? I don't know off the top of my head, T-Man. I do know that the shuttle's down mass is up to 12 tons. No, please don't talk about Ferrari. It's almost Monaco time. Marco, you know what, dude? Like, maybe it's just EJ's being truthful. I don't care. I I don't care. I'm not even gonna watch. I'm not even kidding. I don't care. I don't care. Yeah, there. I said it. I don't care. It's just. I mean, and even if I do watch, Ferrari comes in last, still don't care. Like, call me jaded and a little cynical today, but yeah, I don't care. All right. It's got to be Hubble. Well, 3 helium Hubble was one of the heaviest things the shuttle moved up into space. I don't think we brought that thing back down. Unless there's a shuttle mission that happened recently that I don't know about. Maybe. Thanks, guys. Had to say goodbye to my puppy of 15 years. He was my best friend. That sucks. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's not fun. Hope you hit me up if you come out to Dayton. Wright-Patterson Air Force Museum is pretty much my second home. Wild? I would love to. But also, I am pretty damn confident that if I go to Wright-Patterson and see the Museum of the Air Force, I'm probably going to need to budget out at least a week. Because once I get in there, you won't be able to get me out of it. They'll be like, the museum's closing. And I'll be like, that's good. All right. Bye. You know. Yeah, Alex, it's basically terrible systems engineering, dude. I mean, Alex, it's more cost-cutting nonsense. It's just that this cost-cutting. This stuff, dude, it gets so old, doesn't it? It gets so old. You can't cut costs when you're making an airplane. You know why? Because if it doesn't go wrong, you can't just pull over to the side of the road. Dude, this penny pitching nonsense that we do nowadays is just, it's so tiring, dude. It's so tiring, man. It's so freaking tiring. It's so tiring, man. Dude, you know what, Alex? It's ridiculous. Like, if I won the lottery, and say I hit Powerball and it was like $1 billion, all right? You take the lump sum, it's like $600 million. That is a sufficient amount of money to start an aerospace company. I would not budge on quality of product. I would not budge. Absolutely not. I don't care if I go bankrupt without ever launching anything. I'd rather go down swinging than make something that could potentially get somebody hurt. I'd rather go down swinging. I'd rather go friggin' bankrupt, dude. Because at least I knew I went down swinging giving it my best. You know what I mean? Yeah, so the museum is closing. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, no, I brought a tent and some snacks. I'll just camp out underneath the XB-70. It's fine. Yeah, there's a reason why I'm like kind of afraid to go there, Rem. How to start a small airline? Start with a big airline. Yep, pretty much. I mean, Slavy, the reality of the situation, and this is, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't think about this. The reality of the situation is that if I started my own aerospace company, we'd probably fail. Yeah, we'd probably fail. Like, dude, I'm smart. I'm not that smart. Even if I hired, like, the best possible people that I possibly could, the probability of success is still very low. But that, once again, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. Because, man, it would feel really good if it worked. Yeah, single fault redundancy on a critical system, Aqualux, and unless there's sufficient analysis and testing to make sure that it works, is a really stupid thing to do. Like a door is single fault redundant, right? Or a window, single fault redundant. There's only one way to open it up, right? Does that mean single fault redundant window is a bad thing? No. It means that we know enough about windows to know that it's going to open up every time, or a door is going to open every time. Does that mean we have windows on houses and cars and stuff that don't work correctly from time to time? Yeah, sure. But we could be pretty confident that for the most part, with the exception of somebody kicking the door in or somebody smashing the window, that it's probably going to work correctly. James Webb had like 300 points of single fault redundancy because most of it was just like hinges pivoting. Obviously, you're going to know a hinge is going to work. It's a hinge. And second part, how are you going to make a hinge to fault redundant? Right? But yeah, exactly. Twitch streamer starts aerospace company and doesn't fail. Now that's a headline. Boeing was very successful when they were an engineers company. Once upon a time, Marco, Boeing was about engineering the best. Cost be damned. That's why the 747 exists. Cost be damned.
Discovery.
Marco, does that sound familiar? That almost sounds like what I was talking about with funding. About, like, with SLS funding and with Saturn V funding. Because it's almost like you have no idea how much it's going to cost. You could have all the pencil necks in the world, push numbers till they're blue in the face. You have no idea how much it's going to cost until you actually go and do it. That's how Boeing used to engineer planes. Now, don't get me wrong. I would argue that the 777X is engineered that way. It is that plane is arguably a masterpiece of engineering. But the 777 chassis was something that was engineered by Boeing before they got acquired by McDonnell Douglas. Just saying. How could a hinge fail? And then it was juice. Yeah, right. Like I said, sufficient testing. Anyway, Geek, I'm sorry, man. You can make the door a slider, I guess. Do you think it's a Boeing problem or an overall aerospace industry problem? I think it's the overall industry, but you know more than you. See, Brian, at face value, it seems like it's some kind of industry problem. But here's the thing. You don't hear about the planes that work correctly. You don't hear about the planes that work correctly. Right? Is there anything wrong with a Cessna 152? No. Because it works. So it works correct. Ow. Because it works correctly. Appreciate it, brother. Didn't want to bring down the stream. Oh, dude, I'm already having a crappy day, dude. And you know what I find, Geek? I find that dogpiling it on when I'm having a crappy day to make it like an extra crappy day helps. As weird as that sounds, because then I get all my crappiness out the door, and then the next day is great. I'm messed up, aren't I? Wow, that's messed up. That sounded way better in my head. Been researching, and apparently the speed tape on the U2 was also inverted. It seems just like a UI thing, all systems. It's like how Linux, Macintosh, and Windows all have a start menu, right? But they're all a little bit different. That seems like what's going on there, but I could be wrong. Oh, please, can I add a bunch of crap onto you? Now, Element, I would like to remind everyone that it's a... I'd like to remind everybody that it's a crappy day for me is probably not a crappy day for everybody else. I don't really have crappy days. Relative. Believe me, I've worked a normal job. Yeah, this is fine. It's okay. And I should pretty much suck it up. But, yeah, it's all relative, right? I'm full of crap. So if I release all my crap today, I'll have a better tomorrow. I mean, Vin, you should be going to the bathroom at least once a day. I'm just putting it out there. If you don't go to the bathroom at least once a day, you might want to go to a gastroenterologist.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Oh, there you go, Dio. Cool. Have you tried taking Pepto? Huh? Indigestion? Diarrhea? Feels like more of a modern American company thing. It's not just us, Aqualux. Look at Kness. Look at Kness and Ariane 5 and Ariane 6. Man, did they screw that up. What the hell are you doing? It's not just us, dude. It's definitely not just us. I think, I don't know, man. I mean, like I said, it's a little bit of survivor's bias because we don't hear about the vast majority of planes nowadays that work correctly. But also at the same time, we also don't. Not every problem that an airplane has is as high profile as the 737 MAX was. You know. I mean, there's all technical service bulletins. I mean, Nicholas, you know, you've worked in the industry in some capacity, or at least you think you have like kind of a knowledge of it, right? Like, there's always little things like this with planes that constantly need to be changed based off of stuff that was learned from flying them. What's wrong with Ariane 5 and Ariane 6? Just curious. Marco, the last Ariane 5 has already been manufactured and will fly in a month. The first Ariane 6 is not even close to being done. The European Space Agency is literally going to have a stopgap pretty much about a year with no launch capability. What are you guys going to use? Vega? Oh, that broke too, remember? That damn Zafino upper stage had nozzle burned through and freaking blew the back of the SRB off. Pressure testing is ongoing at Massey's. On NSF if you want to watch. Yep. This is totally not at all the discussion, but I flew in the 737 MAX last week, and I think it was the nicest plane I've ever been on. It is a nice plane when it works correctly. Yeah. I mean, I could say it sounds like a capitalism thing, but I don't think that comes off the way that I mean it. No, dude, like, you're going to say that, and then, like, we're going to go through the motions. Oh, I don't think it's a capitalist, and that's going to devolve into a monetary system type of discussion. Dude, I don't know if I want to have that. I don't know if I'm in the mood, man. I'll be 100% real. I don't know if I'm in the mood to have that conversation, buddy. How much can this SSDO lift? I could do about 30 tons. Yeah, 30 tons up. 30 tons up. Mm-hmm. One of the best pieces of equipment I've ever engineered. Yeah, I know, scary, for real. Let's just talk straight politics instead. Yeah, but those little tweaks are done in the open and are a result of oversights. But the angle of attack thing had Boeing people bragging about pulling the wool over. Yeah, exactly, Aqualux. It's blatant nefarious behavior. We already did a politics and money section of today's stream. Yeah, for real. Launch it. Dude, I don't even know if this thing still flies. Here, how about I meet you in the middle? Let's launch its little brother.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
There we go. Hey, Caligulard, 88-month resub. Only one way to find out. So, guys, I have the title of this stream right now set to... getting reacquainted with an old friend. Guys, I don't really know what I want to do in KSP. I kind of want to just go snoop around. Go ahead, snoop around. Kind of just want to look around, if you don't mind. And don't get me wrong, this probably isn't content that it's probably something I should have done off stream. But I thought you guys would appreciate going down memory lane with me. And then we make new memories. We build new houses on memory lane. Yeah, Beefy, of course I do. Remember this? You guys remember the K79R1? I remade this thing in less than an hour. I remade it in less than an hour because for whatever reason I thought the craft file needed to be remade because I didn't like it. It does look nice, though. Very nice looking plane. Only thing I wish KSP-1 had that KSP-2 has is the wings. Yeah. KSP-2 with procedural wings, Josh, would be amazing. Love you, dude. The speed is also inverted on the B1. There you go. It would be better in BRG. Nice. That's the rear opening cargo plane, yeah. Looks like a C5 and a C-17 had a child in KSP. That's pretty much what that plane is supposed to be, Wild Rhino. Now, what do you think this thing is supposed to be? New here. Hey, Foreplay. Since KSP2 launched, been waiting for this KSP reacquaintance. Foreplay, did you ever see me play KSP1? I don't remember. I know you started popping in chat a lot during when KSP2 came out, but I don't know. A lot of you guys have never seen me play KSP1. A 747 and an Osprey. That's not a bad guess, Brimstone, to be honest with you. DeLorean, you've seen a few? Yeah, right. A V-22 and a C-5. No, I haven't seen your KSP builds, but I heard you on Boosters and Space Tape. Oh, right on. Yeah, those guys are cool. I like those guys. I used to go on there from time to time back, like, 8, 9 years ago. But yeah, they started doing it again, which is cool. Jet truck is best truck. So this thing, guys, believe it or not, is the combination of a C-130, a Mil-12 Russian helicopter, and then what was the name of that twin rotor gyroscope?
Discovery, go at throttle up.
It was a twin rotor gyrocopter that the Russians made. Hey, Ren. Gifted 5 subs. I don't think I deserve it today, but thank you. No, they brought it back when KSP2 came out, Loopy.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Danke für das Geschenkabo. Ja, ist gut. Ja.
Discovery, go at throttle up. Discovery, go at throttle up.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty centric viewpoint. But yeah, I don't want to have that conversation, dude. We know where that conversation leads. It's just the Mil V12 and the K. Is it a Kemov 50? I don't think it's a KA-50. KA-50 is a dual rotor. No, it's a KA-10. It's a Kemov 10, I think. Nope. Nope, not a Kemov 10. Let me see. KA-15. No. KA-8. Nope. Marco, I've never seen you play KSP1. I'd love to see you build some complicated project that you can't do in KSP2 right now. Oh boy, yeah, you like that. Alright. Oh, excuse me. So this is a gyrocopter, guys. It has 2 high bypass turbofans. And basically the high bypass turbofans can basically shut off, and it could fly around like a helicopter. Right, like a twin rotor helicopter. So think like a Chinook, but also, you know what? Just okay. Just plugged in. I haven't used it in a long time. All right, let me get the joystick now. I'll show you. Are you gonna go back to Satisfactory after the new update 8? Yeah, yeah. I was gonna sit here and be like, why am I explaining this? It kind of works like the Mil-12, and it kind of works like a Chinook, and it's about the size of a C-130. If you look at it from the side, I definitely tried to make it look like a C-130. So, here, check this out. Alright, let's see if your boy remembers how to do this. Oh, look, the Aero UI. Oh, that's nice. I needed to remember the controls. Ever played DCS? Yes. It's quite loud, huh? Yeah, a little bit. So, you see, it moves around like a helicopter, right? Pretty straightforward stuff, you know. Now, watch. So you activate the engines, right? Get some forward velocity going. So now what we're going to do is go to the jet engines, shut them off, set the collective pitch down. Watch. We're going to tilt the engines back and then set collective pitch down. And now it's an auto gyro. So the rotors actually aren't being powered right now. There's no power going to them. They're just tilted back a little bit so they can kind of experience, so they can spin because of oncoming velocity. Basically, the engines push me forward, and the incoming air hits the tilted blade and gets it to spin. And because the blades spin, they actually generate lift. The wings of this airplane that's flying right now are actually just the helicopter blades. It's not auto rotation per se, Brimstone, but they are auto rotating. This is a gyrocopter. But yeah, gyrocopters do use auto rotation. So this plane, despite being basically, I mean, it basically is about the wingspan of a C-130, and it should, you know, with the jet engines, it should, you know, and if it had no rotors on it, it should basically be able to perform like a C-130. But the thing about it is that because I have the rotor blades spinning on top, this thing can fly up and it can fly up high in altitude like a U-2. Because the blades spinning give you so much additional lift. My wings are like 3 times the size. Because of the blade spinning, they're like 3 times the wing lift surface area of my actual wing. And also it's VTOL. Yep. Yeah, Rhino, this plane isn't necessarily based off of anything in real life. doesn't that generate a ton of extra drag? It would if it was designed to go any faster than subsonic sumo, sure.
Discovery, go at throttle.
Pepis, 55 months. Thank you. It's not based on anything in real life, but it's based. Thank you. Chad and I came up with this thing, dude. KSB1 still holds up with all the visual mods, man. Did you ever see the Hughes XH17? What? Okay. What is that XH? I'd have to go read about it. Here. The cool thing about this is that, like I said, the cyclic controls, I have a Cal controller in here that basically does some, it's a primitive flight computer. Because Cal controllers, you're only limited so much by what they can do. I basically have it rebind the controls. So the control that you would be using as the cyclic control when you're flying the helicopter around gets rebound as an aileron controller. So basically the cyclic is being used as an aileron. That's how that's my aileron control, the blade spinning. The XH-17 is meant to carry over 15 tons. What's the max ceiling for this? In Kerbal Vanguard, it can fly over 30,000 feet. Now, keep in mind, 30,000 feet is pretty good in real life. In Kerbal, because Kerbal is so much smaller, 30,000 feet is like 80,000 feet. Or 100,000 feet. If you can make something fly right up there in KSB, like at 30,000 feet in KSP, then yeah, that would be like 80,000 feet in real life. Now, don't get me wrong, like, just because I built this in Kerbal doesn't mean I would even know where to start to try and make something like this in real life, but you get the idea. KSP has a lot smaller of an atmosphere. Space is not as far that way as it is on Earth. You know what I mean? Brother-in-law is still stable, by the way. Well, that's good, alleviate. What do you reckon about the new Aston DB12? I don't know. Is there a picture of it? Is it just going to keep showing me pictures of trees? I think it looks good, yeah. Essentially, it's a VTOL subsonic SR-71. Think a C-130 and a U-2 and a Harrier kind of all combined. Or not a Harrier. Or let's say a Chinook all combined in one. I think they made a mistake by it being a V8 and not a V12. I was actually alleviate. What I was gonna say is that I never liked like the Aston Martin Vanquish. I was always a Vantage V12 guy. I was always I like the V12. That's one of. I think the V12 Vantage is one of the most beautiful cars ever designed, dude. Like ever. That one. Dude, it's perfect. No matter what angle you look at it, it's just a beautiful car. Yeah, the V8's still cool. Dude, there's no angle that you look at it where you're not like, oh. It's a look. Sweet brickwork. Yeah, right, dude? For real. Meanwhile, we're still just up here at like 22,000 feet, just kind of flying around. We have a Condor launch with a strong back, please. I don't know. Venture, you've driven one around a test track. It was unreal. Nice, dude. That's cool. How you doing, Irvin? I saw you pop in a little bit earlier when I was talking about budget. How's things, man? Rather, you missed the 98 XJ8. What'd you do with it? You prefer Jags? No, that's fair. That's fair, Supercar, for sure. Alright, Antares, I'll see you, buddy. Hard times, had to sell it. Oh, that's rough, dude. That's rough, Brad. That sucks, man. What's your favorite F1 car design over the years of watching it? I think the Ferrari 641 is one of the best looking Formula One cars of all time. It was like basically the cars that they were driving right when I started watching Formula One. Good pal, just started Satisfactory, new addiction unlocked. Huh, good luck with that. Now here, check this out, dudes. Watch. Ready? The six-wheeled one Senna's car. Ayrton Senna never drove a six-wheeled car, Sun Temple, I don't think. I think, if I'm recalling correctly, the six-wheeled car was a Tyrrell. Senna never drove for Tyrrell. Spot ship. Très bien. Merci. I think the 641 is a better looking car than the 4.4, Chief, but the 4.4 is definitely in my top 5. It's beautiful. Perfect. Yeah, so check this out. So what we can do here, ready? Watch. So the engines aren't powered, turbofans are shut off. So now we're auto-rotating. Watch. Is that the economy mode? Yep. Do we know when co-op is coming to KSP2? No idea. See, as gravity pushes me down closer to the ground, right, we gain an airspeed. When we gain airspeed, the blades spin faster, and they end up generating more lift. This is how helicopters, despite, you know, despite like the possibility of an engine failure with a helicopter, this is how helicopters are able to stay flying even if the engine shuts off. Basically, gravity's pushing down, and if you pitch the blades at in a certain way, right? If you pitch the blades in a certain way, you know, as you're falling out of the sky, your main rotors will start spinning. And if you do it right, they'll eventually start spinning enough to be able to generate enough lift to get you to not crash. Yeah, it's called auto rotation. pretty cool. Yep, manage your potential energy. That's right. I wonder how quiet this would be in real life. Urban, a plane like this in real life would probably be about as loud as like a V-22. So how loud? Yes. Like a gyrocopter. That's exactly what this is, Psycho Harry. Yeah. It's a gyrocopter, dudes. I would rather have engine failure, Dread Swirl, in a helicopter. I would rather have engine failure over the tail rotor coming off. Yeah, the tail rotor coming off, you're pretty screwed. Engine failure, you can still auto-rotate to the ground. I mean, if I had to... don't get me wrong. The best thing to do would be just to make sure that the vehicle is maintained properly before you fly and avoid the whole scenario entirely. But if I had to choose... So basically, this is so counterintuitive. If you're not familiar with how rotor wing aircraft work, it's so ridiculously counterintuitive. Basically, you have to intentionally try to get it to fall out of the sky. With a helicopter, it's pretty easy because you don't have wings. But the crazy part about this is that you basically have to collectively pitch all your blades downward. You have to make sure the helicopter blades are pitched downward so they dig into the oncoming air, and collectively pitching down when you're powered will make you go down. But if you're falling out of the sky, collective pitch downward will actually make you fall less. Strange, right? And then how the auto rotation works is that we ain't out of the woods yet, dudes. We're still falling at a crazy, crazy sink rate. We're falling at 15 meters a second. We're still basically falling out of the sky. The crazy thing is that it's not necessarily about a soft landing. With the helicopter, when you have engine failure and you're trying to come down with one, it really is more about your blade RPM. That's what matters the most. See, you got to get the blades spinning really, really fast. Or at least fast enough. And it's going to be weird because you basically have to look like you're going to crash right into the ground right until the last second when you pitch the blades up and you come in for a landing. Now, nobody ever said that your helicopter landing after engine failure is going to be smooth, but you're on the ground in one piece. See? Yeah, Urban, it's kind of the same thing. But flat spinning a fixed wing, getting out of a flat spin in a fixed wing aircraft is kind of like what you want to do with the helicopter to get it to come down in one piece. It's like you do the opposite procedure, which is kind of funny, right? Like, because the flat spin is what you want the blades to be doing. You want to just basically be flat spinning and have the whole thing work like a, you know, a whirligig, the thing that falls out, maple seed leaf, like what, yeah, it was said in chat already. Also, spinning is a good trick from what I've heard. But yeah, that's the K-92. Pretty cool plane, right? Yeah, programming those cow controllers was a little bit of a pain in the butt. Is blade stall bad too? Well, yeah, T-Man. When you're in a helicopter, if you rotor stall is basically you trying to ask the helicopter something to try and break the laws of physics. Rotor stall means your blades aren't working. Your blades aren't generating lift, and if your blades aren't generating lift, your helicopter is falling out of the sky. Basically, at no point when a helicopter is flying, like if I'm going to explain this in plain English, and this is going to sound a little bit like, well, no crap, EJ, but at no point in any helicopter's flight time should the blade stop spinning. If the blade stops spinning, even if there's an engine failure, something has gone catastrophically wrong, I hope you have a parachute. Wait, guys, are we talking about retreating blade stall? Or are we just talking about rotor stall in general? What are we talking about here? Because those are two different things from what I understand. I always wondered why there aren't more ducted fans on, let's say, a V-22. A ducted fan with variable pitch on the Blades Amateur is hard to engineer, that's why. Regular blade stall. Rotor stall is basically when you try to get the helicopter to do something and the motors don't have enough power to do the maneuver. Retreating blade stall. Retreating blade stall is something that happens when a helicopter is going too fast. Basically, helicopters have theoretical maximum air speeds because, well, actually, I mean, it's not like a maximum airspeed. Every helicopter is susceptible to this. The only ones that kind of aren't are like Chinooks and multi-rotor systems. But if you have something like a UH-1, like a Huey, and you try to go forward, and you're going forward with your Huey, say you let go of the controls, right? Just let the controls go. Well, what's going to happen? Well, the thing will just it'll basically want to turn over and crash. Compare that to, say, like if you're flying around in a Cessna, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure as a pilot you should never take your hands off the controls. But I'm sure there's cases where you would. Like in a Cessna, I don't think you should do that. But say you have the plane trimmed out and you're good. The plane's just flying. You let go of the controls, it'll just keep going that way. It'll just keep flying. With a helicopter, you let go of the controls, it'll flip over and crash. The reason why is because you have a blade. The blade, air is coming at the blade this way. See? Air is coming at the blade. Now, if we pause the game, right? We go down here and look. You're getting oncoming laminar flow, right? So you have clean air going to this blade, and the blades are they're asymmetric, right? It has a leading edge and a trailing edge. It's essentially a wing, okay? Air is designed to flow over it this way. See? Designed to fly over it that way. And then the blade over here, this blade, see, air is flying over it backwards. So that is not making any lift, and that is making lift. So if you have a single rotor shaft helicopter, right, because when you're flying forward, the helicopter blade is spinning, but one blade is generating lift, right, and the other blade is not, your center of lift, if you let go, is going to move. It's going to bias to the right of your center of mass, or in this analogy, it would be the left for you guys, and your thing's just going to flip over. That's retreating blade stall. Basically, the blade that is retreating, as opposed to the blade that is advancing, is never going to generate as much lift. Why? Because at the end of the day, a rotor is just a really small wing that's designed to spin really fast and generate lift. Rotors are still aerofoils, right? And if you flow air over the back of a wing, it doesn't work very well. Planes don't really like flying backwards. Helicopters do, though, ironically, because at some point the helicopter can fly backwards because of retreating blade stall, but it'll just do the same thing in the opposite direction. Funny story. Have you tried to carry heavy payload with this? I don't know what I rated the payload bay for. So that's why helicopter pilots look like they're always wrestling a chopper. Yeah. Yeah, Beefy. Of course. Yeah. Flying a helicopter... Let me put it to you like this. I've never flown a helicopter. I don't have my pilot's license. I know a lot about how they work because I needed to learn a lot about how they work to make vehicles like the one you just saw. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just going to search for one solution to fix all the problems. There were times to like figure, oh, I know everything about helicopters because I read how a 206B Jet Ranger works. No, that's not how that works at all. I read about every helicopter and how they all work. There was a time where there was no robotics in KSP, and I tried to engineer a swash plate made out of RCS parts and thermometers. So because there's no helicopter parts in KSP, I made helicopter parts out of rocket parts. And in order to do that and to understand it correctly, because there's no part like that in the game, I had to engineer my own parts and I had to figure out how they worked. So, long story short, with a helicopter, I would never, ever take my hands off of the controls on a helicopter when it's flying if I'm the one flying. The only way I would take my hands off the controls is if the guy sitting next to me has his or her hands on the controls. I would not do that. No way. It requires constant input, or else it'll just spin out of control and crash. Helicopters are literally right on the brink of working. In fact, I think a good way to say it would be like helicopter. You know, a lot of people say like helicopters just beat air into submission, and that's how they fly. That's pretty much right. They basically brute force themselves into the air. It's like probably the worst way to get something to vertically take off and land. Yeah, a single rotor, tail rotor design, probably the worst way to do a VTOL. But the thing is, it's the worst way to do a VTOL, but it's better than all the other ways. Weird, huh? Yeah, pretty much, Urban. And yeah, helicopters literally brute force themselves into the air. Everything about a helicopter and how it works, like if one thing fails, the whole thing will just turn into a jiggling mess of metal and hopefully not people. Yeah, everything about a helicopter, like everything there has to basically work to beat air into submission, because if it doesn't, you crash. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Hey, Left Hand, 29-month resub. It's only the worst way on Earth. Yet, the ingenuity exists. At my last job, I became friends with some helicopter flight instructors. It was funny how they would do learning how to use an autopilot, because since the helicopters didn't have them, the student would tell the instructor what they are doing and the instructor would fly it for them. That just meant that the instructor would deliberately do the wrong thing if they say the wrong thing. That's funny. I wonder how long until the military finally contracts for a fan lift utility craft. Variable pitch ducted turbofan hellfish would be really, really cool. The problem with doing that is very complicated. You'd be better off doing something like a drone and using differential RPM for maneuverability and having 4 rotors. Because a variable pitch EDF or variable pitch ducted fan, electric or turbo shaft is... Yeah, that'd be really hard. With a ducted fan, the blades have to literally be as close as they can to the ducting as possible to create the vacuum, to get all the benefits of the fan duct. And if they're not, it won't. Yeah, it'll work worse. You ever notice how close the blades are on a turbofan design to the outside? They're like maybe a couple millimeter away. And the only reason why they're a couple, like 2 or 3 millimeter away when you see them on the ground is because they're designed to be like a millimeter away when you're up in the air flying and the engine is hot. Right? It would be very, very difficult to try and get these things to have some type of variable geometry. Not saying it couldn't be done, but it would be so ridiculously complicated that it would. Dude, I mean, I don't know. Somebody's probably working on it somewhere. That would be a really, really hard thing to do. EJ, I forgot actually. We forgot to take into account gyroscopic precession. Retreating blade stall turns into a pitch up moment. Yeah, like I said, it goes up and to the right. Aqualex. Yeah, there's also the gyroscopic precession, which is why I think Chinooks are superior. It's a superior design pretty much in every facet. Funny thing is that because the Chinook has 2 blades, right, and they gyroscopically cancel each other out, and also there's not much retreating blade stall because you have 2 blades, right? Chinooks are actually one of the fastest helicopters ever made. A Chinook. The helicopter that's as big as it's as big and as aerodynamic as a school bus. It's one of the fastest helicopters in the world. Now, don't get me wrong, the Lynx is the fastest. It's a British helicopter. But a Lynx could almost fit inside of the Chinook's payload bay. And the Chinook is almost as fast. Funny story. ASAP. What's ASAP? The NASA the Safety Advisory Panel. The Associative Safety Advisory Panel would be. If ASAP has a report about Starliner, they're basically saying Starliner isn't safe. Had a Chinook go over 2,000 feet. Yep. Didn't they use helicopter to carry rocket parts at one time? Sure. Could just keep building Harriers. They seem to work pretty good. Why reinvent the plane? Harriers are awesome. I think that the Harrier is a much more sophisticated system than a helicopter that achieves the same result. The big problem with the Harrier is that it can't go supersonic. Harriers can't fly above the speed of sound. They go about as fast as a P-51 because VTOL. Trade-offs. And the only way you're not going to get a trade-off like that is if you make something like the F-35 and it ends up being ultra ridiculously expensive because you spared no expense because you wanted to do everything. Wow, okay. Yep. Let's just call this stream the How About EJ Inadvertently Gets Into Real Conversation stream. That conversation got real fast. How fast can the F-35 go? Mach 2? O-Force? I mean, when you think about the F-35B and what it actually is capable of, the price tag of one of those things kind of makes a lot more sense. An F-35B can literally VTOL off of a helicopter pad, go up in the air, go supersonic, and go somewhere else and land on another helicopter pad. That is an extremely tall order for any aircraft, let alone a variant of one aircraft. That's a ridiculous capability. How does this happen? Did somebody link this already? Yeah, okay. What's going on? With munitions, the Harrier was incapable of VTOL. Yeah, the Harrier can really only land. That's right. The Harrier only has 1.0 TWR with no pylons on it, so it could only land VTOL. That's right. Hellfish, I did talk to, in my travels, just around all the museums that we went to, I did at one point get to talk to a guy that worked on the Harrier development program, and he said that they were he was an RAF lad. He said that at one point BAE was working on a Harrier with an afterburner to overcome said problems. Yeah. Crazy, right? This is a live tweeting, non-streamed hearing. Get ready for the biggest event today. The Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel public meeting starting at 5 p.m. ASAP member Susan Helms says Starship is a watch item for Artemis 3 mission critical path. Test flight didn't go to completion but yielded a lot of good data. ASAP says the investigation into Soyuz in progress coolant leaks is still going, with the cause not clear yet. Also monitoring very small air leaks in the Russian service module, a long if minor issue. Yes, the rim of the Zvezda docking port at the back of the space station is leaking. ASAP chair Patricia Sanders sounds skeptical Starliner will be ready for a crewed flight test in July, noting a number of open risks for the vehicle. She strongly encourages NASA to have an independent team set up in and assess the program. Oof. ASAP wants NASA to take a measured look at Starliner's readiness and seriously consider an independent review. ASAP Chair Sanders cited parachutes and battery sidewall rupture as open concerns. Battery sidewall rupture during which phase of flight? What is battery sidewall rupture? The batteries are contained in a cell, Forge. And if I had to guess, for weight purposes, Starliner probably has some aerospace-derived battery. The batteries on airplanes need to be really light, so they end up being lithium batteries, because lithium is pretty light. See, that's why I'm curious about the phase of flight for battery sidewall rupture, because, well, okay, say Starliner comes down with its airbags and it lands on the airbags and the shock is too much and it ruptures the sidewall of the battery. Lithium, if anybody's a chemist out there, lithium doesn't react well with oxygen. And by doesn't react well, I mean it explodes. So, basically, you could land Starliner, it'll rupture the battery wall, lithium meets oxidizer in the form of the atmosphere, and it literally combusts. It'll catch on fire. I don't think I need to tell you why having a capsule on fire when you're trying to get people out of it is probably not a good idea. That happened once in the past. It didn't end well. Granted, that fire was inside the capsule, but still, fire plus human spaceflight, probably not a good idea. Now, the other thing is that the reason why I asked about phase of flight, and the answer is no, it's not good at any particular point in any phase of flight, right? But here's the thing. If battery sidewall rupture happens sometime during on-orbit operations and then the thing goes to re-enter, great. You go through re-entry heating, you get back down to the atmosphere, and your spacecraft never stops going through re-entry heating. It literally catches on fire once it gets into the atmosphere. And you'd be damn sure that that fire, if it happened on said capsule, would probably burn right through your parachutes that you deploy to, land. That's why, don't get me wrong, battery sidewall rupture in any point in the flight is bad. But if it was encountered at different points, let's just say that there are certain points where it's more fatal than others. What's the issue with the chutes? I don't know. Maybe those two are intertwined for the reason that I just said. I'm just speculating, guys. I have no idea. I would say the word rupture and human spaceflight don't really go well together. Yep. Why are we talking about Starliner catching on fire? Read. Hey, Dragon, what's up? Like the Galaxy Note 7? Yes. ASAP also had a list of concerns about the ISS, most of which they've mentioned before, but don't remember them citing Northrop Grumman's temporary use of a Falcon 9 for Cygnus as one, worried about launch pad access and reduced redundancy. Huh. The chutes had tearing issues on all previous flights. Just did a little bit of research. The first report about battery problems was reported when it was docked to the ISS. This is fine. Oh. Today sucks. Screw Thursdays, man. It's not hump day and it's not Friday. Thursdays suck. Not as bad as Tuesdays, but Thursdays suck. I hate Thursdays. Fridays is my new best friend. Yeah, it's not flying in July or anytime soon. Keep in mind, Hellfish. Maybe. Keep in mind that the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel is literally designed to give you worst case scenarios. This is going to sound messed up, but their assessment of risk and Boeing's and NASA's assessment of risk might be different. But remember, it's the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel's job to give you the worst case scenario. Of course, their risk assessment is basically going to be the absolute worst case scenario. It could be different than NASA and Boeing's. It could be different than NASA and Boeing's, dude. That's all. But the battery did rupture, did it not? Yeah, it did rupture, but the craft landed just fine. If there were people aboard, they would have been fine. See what I mean? Maybe Boeing took it into account. Maybe battery rupture with them isn't how I described. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's the outer wall of a battery, and it has it has an inner and outer seal on it just in case, taking into account this exact problem, because sometimes trying to just beat physics is really difficult. It's possible. Like, I'm not saying the Safety Advisory Panel is right, and I'm not saying Boeing is right. I'm saying they have different ideas about risk assessment. But keep in mind, this Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel isn't just grilling Boeing, they're grilling NASA too. So clearly NASA and Boeing have different ideas about risk than the Safety Advisory Panel. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. The reason why it's not a bad thing is because the Safety Advisory Panel is there to make sure. They're there as another set of data points in risk assessment. Okay? They serve as another set of data points in risk assessment representing the worst case scenario so you can make your spacecraft safer. Maybe they show you something you didn't consider. Maybe we've seen the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel come out and say this isn't safe enough, and then NASA's proved with it. The Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel said Falcon 9 wasn't safe to fly people on because of its COPVs at one point. Yet here we are. Keep in mind that a different opinion on risk assessment doesn't necessarily mean the design is bad. It's there. The whole reason that advisory panel exists is to share what they think is the worst case scenario from an outside perspective. It's there to make sure that you don't have go fever. Even if you don't, it's there just as a reminder, just in case. Because unfortunately, and that's how we have to go about risk assessment in this day and age. Stuff like that was made because somebody said send it with the space shuttle, and well, here we are. As of March, they started a redesign of the batteries. Boeing is also mulling a redesign of Starliner's batteries for after this delayed crewed flight test. It also expects to redesign Starliner's smart initiator system, which separates the crew from the service mod. NASA's paying $24 million for that redesign amid added requirements. Somebody gonna remind me here again why firm fixed pricing, which is what Commercial Crew is doing for development of capsules, is a good idea? Somebody remind me of that. They're the no guy in the room to make sure they find every problem they can. Yep. So for instance, someone says flying outside thermal parameters for the boosters is probably bad, rather than no one saying that. Yeah, clearly there was nobody saying that at the time. Well, there was somebody saying that, Poison, but yeah. Because politicians said so. Once again, it's an it's an ugly truth that everybody has to face. We can sit here and we can argue about prices of things, public, private, whatever. But at the end of the day, you can't legislate against the laws of physics. Sorry. If you want the spacecraft to be as safe as you want it to be, it's going to cost more money. Simple as that. Not because Boeing is trying to squeeze NASA for cash, even though that might have something to do with it. Right? But even if we look at it from an honest standpoint, like, it's going to take that amount of money to redesign the systems. Right? They already agreed to a firm fixed price per capsule per mission, right? You already basically set the price point. So anything that you learn, even before the test flights, because Commercial Crew is firm fixed price, anything that you learn during the test flight program that might reconstitute a redesign is technically evaluated as a cost overrun. Whoops. So technically now it's a cost overrun to just get the capsule working correctly. This is the exact reason why cost plus contracts exist, to take into account exactly what I'm talking about. Remember, we were reading that OIG report a little bit earlier. They recommended firm fixed pricing because there's cost overruns with cost plus contract. Cost plus contracts are there to try and anticipate cost overruns. That is why they exist. When you don't abide by that contract correctly and try to do firm fixed pricing, even if it is cost plus architecture, it still doesn't work. Funny how that works. Hey Maverick Mike, what's up, man? Starliner broke again, Sizep. That's the quick way of saying it. Was this fixed price contracting on Starliner or an open checkbook? No, the whole Commercial Crew program was seen as a low-cost alternative alleviate to Ares 1. They said using two commercial providers would be less expensive than NASA basically building their own human-rated launch vehicle, Ares 1. So instead of Ares 1, we got Falcon 9 and Dragon and Starliner and Atlas, okay, instead. Right? Now, here's the thing. With SpaceX, oh, you're absolutely right. We definitely got our money's worth with that thing. Yeah. You guys want to hear something ridiculous? The Commercial Crew program has two segments. There's Commercial Crew 1 and Commercial Crew 2. Okay? Commercial Crew 1 was the contract for the first 6 missions for crew flights for each capsule. And then the Commercial Crew program has the extension, the Commercial Crew Part 2. I don't know what the exact name is. It's not called Part 2. Commercial Crew Part 2 was basically NASA's option to exercise more missions. Basically said, oh, you flew 6 for us, we're good, we'll fly more. SpaceX finished. Crew 6 is up there. SpaceX has literally done all of their launches under the original Commercial Crew contract, and now NASA has extended them with Crew 7, which is up and coming, before Boeing launched anybody to the space station. What about with Atlas V being retired for Starliner? Novoraptor Tori Bruno has the 6 Atlases that are needed to fulfill the 6 Atlas N22s that are the 6 Atlases that are needed to fulfill Commercial Crew obligations. Those are already procured. Hang on. Here, look at Kerbal for a second. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Hello. They have anything interesting to say about the factory warranty on the Cornet? What? Do you think NASA is sitting there thinking screw this? Let's just get SpaceX to do it all now. No. NASA wants to get their money worth for what they paid. Yeah. And the whole idea behind Commercial Crew is basically bolstering the low Earth orbit market. It's not necessarily about having access to the space station, even though that is a big part of it. The idea is to hand over low Earth orbit operations over a period of time to commercial endeavors and help grow the low Earth orbit market, basically farming it out to commercial companies. The ISS isn't going to be there all the time. It's not going to be there. I mean, we want to try and kid ourselves and pretend like it's going to go out till 2030, but I guarantee you not guarantee, that's not the right way to say it. It really is based off of the numbers. Stretching the ISS lifetime to over 30 years on orbit is a little bit of like, okay. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, I suppose. But the whole idea behind Commercial Crew is to make sure like there are commercial space stations to help farm out low Earth orbit science and make it more accessible. The idea is that you basically hit a tipping point with low Earth orbit access for civilians to basically make it so people would commute, like you might be able to get to a point where like people would commute to work on orbit, right? That's the whole idea. So it's not necessarily just about making 2 capsules that can get to the space station. It's about making sure that when the ISS goes away, that there's a healthy, robust commercial market. And in order to do that, you're going to need competition, because that theoretically would bring the price down for you and me, the end user down the road. You know, if you like baseline low Earth orbit operations as a competition between 2 capsules, right? And then maybe commercial space stations, and then maybe commercial hotels, and maybe commercial dry docks, stuff like that. That's the whole idea. SpaceX has 14 contracted flights. Starliner has 6, and Boeing confirmed that they're now targeting commercial low Earth orbit development because the ISS is taken now. Stupid, I just bought Space Engine on Steam for my 10-year-old. Do you give it a try already? I played it a long time ago, dude. Oh, okay, man, the car warranty joke. Decades old car. I used to get them for my 20-year-old Cavalier. Nice. Fellas, dudes, I gotta stop. I gotta stop. Yeah. Too much bad news. If you guys don't mind, I'm gonna take the rest of the night off, and we'll hit it guns blazing again with a long stream tomorrow. The Vulcan firing being canceled and stuff, like, I'm just like, yeah. Your honest opinion on Starliner. I mean, guys, I could switch us back over to space news if you want. And we could just talk about space. I have the energy to do that. I just don't really feel like playing Kerbal right now. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to focus, dude. We played